Okay, morena tātou, it's gone 9 o'clock, so we'll commence this hui. Nā mai hoki mai. E konei anō tātou. Whakinata tēnei hui me te Karakia poto. Whaia, whaia, whaia. Whaia ki te uru tapanui o tāne. Tāne te wānanga, tāne te uru, tāne te wānanga, tāne te tokorangi. Puta ki te whae ao, ki te wāngarama. Tuti nāna, tuti maranga, te tuhi te rārama. E noho te matara nei. E rō whakairia aki ki runga, kia tina, homi e, hui e, tai ki. Follow the pathways laid before us. Follow the learnings from the past. Follow the expertise we hear. Be aware of our responsibilities and roles, and be enlightened. Establish the seeds of growth. Bind us together through an awakening, so we move forward as one. Okay, we have an apology from Councillor Karakia.
And Councillor Parata and Tibble will be online.
Okay.
Just email, yeah.
Okay, that's good. So, move the Councillor apology from Councillor Parahinga by Councillor Robertson, second by Councillor Ohuhu. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Any declarations of interest? Nothing there. Okay, we'll move on to the confirmation of the non-confidential minutes, which is page 5.
I'm happy to move them.
Seconded.
Moved by Mayor Stoll, seconded by Councillor Robertson. Any matters arising? No matters arising. And we're taking the government's work plan as well, if anyone got any matters from that. We'll have a look at that, so it's all in place. Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. No leave of absence. Acknowledgements and tributes. Nothing there. And today we don't have any public visits and petitions or extraordinary business. No notice of mission and no adjourned business, so we'll move straight into our reports. And our first one is the public conveniences network plan update, page 16. I'm surrounded.
It's a pincer movement.
So who's going to lead this? Angela?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah,
Tyler?
I'll intro and then...
Okay.
I mentioned at the last committee here that one of our priorities for asset planning and livable spaces was public conveniences, just due to the nature of those assets, the risk that they carry, the age of the network and the cost of renewal. So we are doing a lot of work in this space to move from effectively reactive renewals that are driven by asset failure towards proactive renewal, where we're addressing these facilities near their end of life rather than past it. So we've developed a network study, which was an action from Council's public conveniences plan. And the aim of that network study is really to give a strategic framework to the operation, assessing these largely proactive, largely reactive facilities, so that we can make sure that we've got the right facility in the right place, and we're moving towards a network of more strategically located, fit-for-purpose assets. And we're hoping in the medium term that approach is going to move us towards being able to renew these in a far more proactive basis. So it was pretty clear when we assessed the network that the approach that we were best to take was really a framework for assessing renewals, rather than a specific plan and of delivery and implementation. So in doing so, we have sort of given a decision-making framework, but we've also said that what's very important is that at a site-specific level, in each project, we're engaging with communities, engaging with tangata whenua around how we address each site as it comes up. So yeah, effectively we've shared the network study, and happy to take any questions on that.
All right, thanks for that. I've got a question, and it may be a Pauline question. With the ageing facilities, They would be on a depreciation schedule. Is there any funding for depreciation for this?
So in terms of, yes, it would be on a depreciation schedule. That's the first part. The second part is the way that we work for our debt is to say we take all the available funds that we have, which may be some funds for rates coming through from depreciation. We use all of those funds available, but then we look at what is our net debt position. So if you were to accelerate something and saying, yes, depreciation funds came through at a rate, the overall position, you would increase your debt because you have already used those funds that have come in. So yes, the first answer is it would be on a depreciation schedule, but if you were to do more than what you had allowed for within your 3-year plan, the net effect is the debt would go up because you've already taken that into account.
Hello, Councillor Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see that at least 2 of the toilets are currently scheduled for upgrade through other projects. For example, the Waihiriri Domain and the possible reserve upgrades there. I was wondering if there are any other areas of council which may have planned toilet upgrades. For example, the township upgrades like we saw with in Hicks Bay, where they redeveloped the play area and a new toilet came in. So I'm wondering if there are any other of the projects that sat here under council that would address some of the issues for some of these toilets blocks.
Through the chair, the townships projects will be the other area where we may see those facilities addressed through those projects. Regardless, as you know, with the asset management function, livable spaces, it is our duty to plan for the renewal of these facilities, and individual community priorities might accelerate the renewal of some of these, but ultimately we do have that responsibility to ensure that we have a quality network regardless of whether those are subject to township projects or not.
Also, thank you very much for the report. I know all these things about public toilets that I never ever even considered, and being a person who travels up the coast often and stopping in those facilities, I can see the thinking behind the paper, which I really appreciated. It makes sense that the dry model, the dry vault model, where possible, should be installed. I mean, the maintenance cost is sometimes 135% cheaper than the current models that are being maintained. I have a specific question around the Peel Street toilets. Given the historic status of the Peel Street toilets, would this be a hindrance to the recommendations in the report for future-proofing upgrades and designs? What is the current status of the Peel Street toilets? Because it seems like it's been under construction for forever. And I've got one more question, but I'll stop there, otherwise I might get you confused.
Peel Street toilets, I'm probably not the best place to speak to, and I'm not sure along this road.
So, as you'll be aware, it's got a protection status, and so we've been through quite a few council conversations in previous years about its future, but we've obviously made a decision to strengthen it. It has taken some time just to sort out the internal toilet scenario. The strengthening in that building is quite complex, and it's not just an easy build. So we've managed to find a solution, and it's imminent in terms of the toilets being completed and the facility being open again. It won't be in its current form, but it'll be a public convenience. So, yeah.
Are we required, because it has historic places, are we required to regularly upkeep and maintain how it currently is?
Yes, I believe so.
My last question is, in terms of the retirement of certain toilets, will that decision be made based on the non-use of the facility or proximity of one toilet to another? Because I suppose my only worry there would be that even though a public toilet is not as utilised as another, it may leave a whole community without a public toilet facility, even though it's not as utilised as a largely populated area?
So there's a whole bunch of factors that go into when a public convenience is removed, and that we know how sensitive any removal of any asset is. So that factor is absolutely one. So in terms of making sure our network has a good spread across the region, so that all communities do get access to facilities. Use is another one. There's a range of factors in terms of driving distances throughout the region, but absolutely. So it's not necessarily just utilisation, that's the criteria.
Okay, that's all my questions, thank you.
Just do want to follow up on that, because as councillors, we were sitting in a space that we had to spend a massive amount of money on the Peel Street toilets, but wasn't going to be available as a toilet. What's changed?
So the Peel Street toilet, and maybe Diane, if you want to see if you've got any further information, but the Peel Street toilet was always going to be strengthened and a toilet facility provided, provided we had the budget available to make that happen. So that was always a factor.
Okay, we'll leave that. Councillor Telford.
This Peel Street toilet has been a thorn in the side, community side for such a long time. The decision was obviously made to go ahead and strengthen it for whatever reason. We've got a report from a guy who came and spoke to us the other day about historic buildings and more saying us that there's not a historic thing on it, but all I want to know is there a budget around this? Because I don't want this, when that toilet opens, I don't want us to be bombarded as another $1 million toilet, because we've already had one built in Gisborne, which the community is not happy with the cost. Is there actually a budget around this?
Yep, absolutely.
Do we have that made available to us, please?
Sure.
Councillor.
Thank you for the report, ladies. And yeah, like Councillor Rea, I know. Like Councillor Rea, I know so much more about whare paku than I'd ever wanted to know. But as I stopped at the whare paku coming down, I now look at them in a different light in terms of what kind of whare paku they are and why and how. And I think I asked this before, is that just a glorified long drop? I know I've called onto the one in the gorge going into a Pōtiki, heading to a Pōtiki, it's disgusting. I mean, so disgusting you don't use it. And I think that, one of my concerns is how are they maintained and who monitors that maintenance? Is it we rely on the public ringing in to say when it's a mess? And also just in regards to how did you measure the usage of toilets? I'm looking at in particular on page 34, 34, intermittent, high usage. Bay Wharf, I know, is broken. And I often have whānau who go down there fishing saying it's always out of action, they can't use it. So that would explain why it's intermittent, low use sometimes. And then Onepoto Bay is actually increased in use because we now have the board riders container there. And so it has, especially through the warmer months, very high usage with schools coming to Wharekahika to use the Board Riders Club, using the toilets en masse, and it's been, and one of the local girls who lives nearby, she takes to cleaning it to make sure that it's clean for the schools who come. So, okay, I'm just wondering how you measured the usage, and who did you consult around the usage that it gets?
Through the chair, the usage data it's perfect. We work with our community caretakers who on the coast are in many cases based in those communities and can give us a reasonable steer of how much they use based on the wear and tear, the consumables, what they see on the ground. But we don't hang our hat on that and make concrete decisions based on those. There are some facilities which are more modern which have counters installed in them, and that is an effort that we'd like to make to move towards having counters in the majority or eventually all of our facilities. They're really handy to have, but they're very expensive to retrofit, so it's something that we'll realistically only be able to achieve through renewals. And I think your point is why it's so prudent for us to still maintain that ability to do meaningful consultation on a project basis, because communities know best what facilities are most important for them, and how they recreate and how they use their open spaces, and what's changing as well, things like the container, and also totally shifts the demand for that facility as well. And so that's, I think, the importance of that flexibility and why we didn't feel confident to take the information that we had and give such a concrete view of what 10 years of renewals should look like, because actually that flexibility working with community will get us the best outcomes. And your question on dry vault facilities, they have definitely improved a lot. Certainly since the development of the one on the way to Opotiki. We only have one council dry vault facility in this region, and that's at Waiho. We get really good feedback about that one, both from the public and from the community caretaker who looks after it. They differ from maybe the traditional long drops that we're used to, in that they have a sealed concrete chamber under them and a very effective ventilation system. So you know a modern dry vault by the chimney and the whirlybird on the top, and that then kind of removes the odour of those. I think what's really important with them is that the servicing is appropriate though as well, and that they should be looked after just as well as the plumbed facility that we might be replacing installing one of those. You know, a dry, clean, well-maintained facility is probably what's most important as well.
Supplementary to that, please, Chair. And just, I mean, we were all at Pōtaka not too long ago. They have one public toilet down at Lytton Point at Awanui, and it's broken. It has been for some time. And of course that's a very popular site, especially at any long weekend in the summer months. It's got high traffic volumes down there, so it would be good to see some movement in that. Pōtaka doesn't ask for a hell of a lot there, so thank you.
And I'll just follow on from that. With the dry ones, I assume there's still the advantage is that you don't have to plumb them for flushing and that, but you still would need some plumbing for hand washing and all that. So is that right? And the other thing is the usage of a dry one. Is there a level of usage where this is not a good system? You know, if it was in a really high usage area, where instead of getting 20 uses a day, you're getting 150 uses a day. Is there a level of usage with them that they do become problematic?
Through the chair, they don't have a plumbed basin for hand washing. They have a dispenser for hand sanitizer, which removes the need to do any kind of water capture or water delivery, which is quite different from a lot of our remote plumbed systems, where we have, in many cases, water delivered to run the plumbing and then septic removed on a regular basis. In terms of usage volumes, my understanding is that unlike a composting system, a dry vault, its performance isn't necessarily affected by usage, but usage would likely affect your decision as to whether to put in a dry vault or a plumbed system. And there would be sites which are, let's say you had a non-reticulated site which had really high use and you wanted to provide a plumbed system in that really high level, that sort of regional level of service, that would probably be where you would lean towards a plumbed facility, despite some of the costs involved in that. In terms of their performance, they function just as well.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thanks for that report. I actually really enjoyed reading that. Had a family quiz on toilets last night. Just in regards to the Peel Street toilets, our oldest toilet, 113 years old. So we spent 300k on it, 22-23. I'm just wondering where we're at with that and when it'll be operational, because I know I've been there a few times and it's been shut. It's been good old McDonald's for the kids.
So in terms of, so this is the Peel Street toilet, yeah. And sorry, like the completion of that is imminent, isn't it?
Yes, no problem. Also, the restrengthening is complete.
Yep.
And a new toilet, a standalone within the frame of the heritage building, will be installed in the next few months. I would say open by the end of this calendar year. Funding for that has come from the city conveniences budget.
Do we know where that stands in terms of New Zealand toilets? Is it possibly the oldest toilet? First to see the sun and the oldest toilet?
No money for a sign. There's an older one in Dunedin.
Oldest of that style of heritage that design in New Zealand, still operating as a toilet.
Thanks, Leanne.
Yeah, sign, sell it.
Thank you. Couple of things. One, are they all registered on a Toilet Near Me website? Just a question that came to me randomly. The other thoughts are cleanliness versus maintenance. And there's nothing wrong with old sometimes. The older I get, the more I realise it.
Oh my goodie.
And going to the comments, the public comments, yes, there's comments about maintenance, but most of the comments is about cleanliness. And you know, we don't want to throw out an old building just because it was badly cleaned, is my comment, especially when we're short of money. A question about the spike in costing on page 40. The costing is actually double in 2018, 2017 to 2018. The operational expenses go from roughly half a mil to a mil. Just wondering why that spike happened.
Through the chair, as we assess the increase in those costs, we weren't quite as granular as to all the individual factors. I think what's clear is that because of the very high inputs in running a lot of these remote facilities, that has been quite affected by the increasing costs of those inputs. So as labour and as fuel have become more expensive, then actually getting water up to a remote facility and then bringing the septic back has become that much more expensive.
So interesting that it was suddenly at a period though.
Yeah.
Another question, I won't mention names, but there's one on cleaning operator is considerably more expensive than the average. Has that been investigated?
That'll come up in our public exclusion.
Oh, sorry, okay. And then final comment about putting lights in some of these facilities. If that's a really extra cost, is that necessary? We've all got cell phones with torches now. And the other comment is that a lot of the loos are actually locked at night. So what's the point of having a lighted facility that's locked?
Through the chair, I think we're looking towards, these fit-outs being fit for purpose, and there will be some facilities where having lights is very important for security and for safety, and there are others where that's an unnecessary luxury or spend of money. So we would absolutely not be looking at a generic approach across all facilities, because as you say, in some that wouldn't be appropriate.
Right, thanks, Councillor Brett.
Thank you for this interesting report. I really love that focus on access within the report, because it's usually the older people and the very young people who get caught out the most in needing to use a toilet when they're out. Also,
just with regards to the cleanliness, I've got a grandson who I need to take to the toilet sometimes, and it's a bit of a nightmare walking in, and he's like, "No, I'm not going in there." And I have to go, fair enough, we'll go somewhere else. So cleanliness and access being priorities, and also light, because kids don't like it in the dark, and they're the ones that need to use these facilities. And also I'm happy to move the noting of this report.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Gregory. Second by Councillor. Nothing? Oh,
I'd like to make a quick comment in regards to cleanliness of toilets, and us who have been around the table for quite some time have had discussions like this. The toilet is just as clean as someone leave it. Sometimes the cleaning people come in once a day and that toilet is cleaned, or some of the toilets are self-cleaning, water sprayed there. So this is also an opportunity for everyone in our region to take pride in this, and you leave the toilet the way you found it, because that also helps all of us in the long run, because it is also very demoralising for the cleaning contractors when they then get a phone call 2 or 3 hours after they've cleaned a wharepaku and someone has chucked toilet paper or whole toilet roll down or put disgusting stuff on the walls. So often it is also our responsibility as residents and users of this to take pride in the facilities and leave it in the way we find it. Thank you.
thanks for that. It's been moved by Councillor Gregory, seconded by Councillor Pahuruhuriwai. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, thanks, Tyler. Next, we've got the update on the Natural Heritage Fund assessment process, page 81. Melanie's here. Okay, thanks, Melanie. Is there anything?
So just a few notes. As discussed here at the November meeting, when we allocated the 2024 round of the fund, we talked about that we'd discussed reviewing the process that we use to assess and rank the applications. So the current process was implemented in 2016. Since then, there's been a number of changes that meant we thought it was timely to reevaluate how we did it. We've developed a new process. It's not too far removed from the previous process, but it's more streamlined, user-friendly, and reflects developments in policy, national and regional priorities, catchment plans, groups, etc. We've also overhauled the application form. This is now sitting with forms to be loaded onto the website hopefully this week, and we'll soon begin the process of promoting the next round of the fund to July.
Okay, thanks for that. I just wouldn't want a little bit of discussion around having 3 applications in a row. I was thinking, 3 in 3 years. I just wondered whether it should be 2 or something, because it is oversubscribed and it does sort of lock people out if someone's constantly coming back for it. So I think the first application probably needs to cover off the project a bit better than 3 years in a row. Just a discussion point, I think. I know there have been quite a lot of repeats in the process over the years.
Sorry, through the chair. We discussed whether 2 or 3 years is probably the best option, but our feeling has been because we were going to cap the amount that we would allocate to any one project in 1 year at $20,000, that there would be some projects that wouldn't be able to achieve their goals if they could only apply twice, because we do encourage people to stage projects where possible, because it makes it more manageable and more affordable, usually for the people that are undertaking the work, because it can be, once you, for example, if you're planting, once you've got plants in the ground, there's still a lot of work then to look at them. So planting huge areas in one go is not always practical. So that was the reasoning behind allowing people to spread projects over 3 years, just to make it A, more affordable and B, more manageable.
So if one were to have 3 applications in a row, when would they next be eligible to apply if they were?
We thought about probably a 2-year stand-down period, but people could still apply. But if the fund is oversubscribed, then with the new priority system that we've developed, they would then drop to the lower priority level. So if we weren't oversubscribed, we could still fund them. But if we are, then we'll miss out.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Councillor Robinson.
So just thinking that one through logically, if there is oversubscription, but someone's project really did require a second or third instalment, but they dropped down the pecking order because of the oversubscription, how do you then ensure you actually capture that so that project doesn't flounder and that initial potentially 20,000 just is wasted because there's not follow-up money? Because they would almost rank higher, really, when it came to a second dib, which otherwise it's a failed investment.
But I also think that being clear with this from the outset, hopefully we can work around those if something like that was to arise. At least this way, it's visible. You can see long term that the NHF is a small fund, so it's not designed to be supporting very large scale projects over very long periods of time. Unfortunately, because of the size of it, it's not able to do that.
Supplementary, Mr. Chair. Do most applicants in applying say or declare that they're in fact going to need maybe 60k for the project for completion, or do they only ever really say, look, we just need this first bite and then they quietly want to come back and have a second dip? Because maybe if they're required to disclose this as part of a bigger project, then that would provide enough information for you to make a real determination in your matrix. I mean, if you did that, then I think that would remove some problems there.
Yes,
I'm quite happy to move this paper and I support what is being proposed. I have visited quite a few of the people who have applied, and these are usually like $2,000 or $3,000 out of or 29, smaller chunks of money, but people also have to put some of their own in as well, so the commitment is there from them as well. And I've visited some of these sites because they are follow-up to make sure people use it in a proper way. So I'm quite happy for us to streamline the process and make sure this $100,000 is spent in the best possible way. So I'm happy to move this.
Thank you. Second. Second by Councillor Foster. Anything further? Councillor Gregory.
Thank you. If I could just ask a question in terms of that $100,000, it's in the long-term plan. Is there any threat to that with our recovery?
Unless something comes up through the deliberations, but no.
Okay, Councillor Reid.
So just on your discussion topic, Mr. Chair, I was just, like, as a person who runs environmental projects, like, trees aren't cheap. Trees aren't cheap, and 20k really is a drop in the bucket depending on the size and scale of your project. I think that if a case-by-case scenario was considered in the applications, that actually this is their sort of larger scale where they're wishing to head to, but in terms of this funding, it would begin and finish this aspect of a larger scale project. Because I think also knowing that native trees really require 5 years of maintenance in order to be given the best growth life and for longevity in where they're planted. So in terms of the not being allowed, after 2 or 3 years to reapply, I think that case by case, if the actual entire concept proves that it does offer some real, so if it is contributing to Taruhiru catchment plan and it's having a wider scale positive effect on the community, that they actually shouldn't be cut off at 3 years, that they case by case should be given an opportunity to complete maybe a 5-year project.
Councillor Pahuruhurui.
Yeah, thanks ladies. Yeah, just to support what Councillor Rea is saying, and maybe that's might explain a little bit as well why there have been new applications received for whenua Māori on page 85. You've noted that. Because the reality is that it takes at least 5 years to get things embedded, get the trees embedded, and any other projects. So to apply for small land blocks or community organisations to apply for what they will not effectively 20,000 per year, it's probably not worth necessarily, they add it all up in terms of how far that will go, it's not, maybe not enough. Or it could be just that it's not out there enough in terms of how to apply. I know you've done some work on the application form to make it a bit more user friendly, so but yeah, maybe that's, I agree with Councillor Rea in terms of that 5 years is 3 years is not enough, 2 years is not enough. Definitely not enough. 1 year is definitely not enough, and 3 years is hardly enough. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a balance to be met between the applicants and lots of projects done, or one or two projects. It's a balance that we've got to do each time it comes in front of us, I think. All right, okay, it's just a noting report, so it's been moved by His Worship and seconded by Councillor Foster. Nothing further. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. Okay, cemetery planning update, 94. And just, I don't know if you're aware, we do have that excluded paper which is part of this committee, but for efficiency, that will be after infrastructure operations.
This paper is really an introduction and a update on a multi-year project which will future-proof our ability to provide a regional level facility in the urban area. Effectively, Taruheru Cemetery in its current land parcel is expected to reach capacity in the next 10 years. There is undeveloped land within that land parcel which we can bring in and utilise. Within 10 years we expect to exhaust our current land within that site, at which point there are two viable options, either to extend the Taruheru Cemetery onto land at 587 Nelson Road, which is currently held by council but it's not zoned or classified as cemetery, or to identify another site for a regional level facility near the urban area. So we sought some advice on how best to tackle this and our best approach, and where we've been guided is to first undertake the feasibility on 587 Nelson Road. The cost and the barriers to developing any other site are such that really it will be important for us to fully understand whether that site is feasible regardless of whether it's desirable, and that's something that we can commence quite quickly. So we've started that, and we're hoping to have investigations begin on that soon. The feasibility study takes place in 3 stages. First is the technical feasibility, looking at the ground conditions, so the geotechnical hazards and the hydrological conditions on the site, the height of the groundwater, how that translates to the current cemetery. The second stage is the feasibility of rezoning and classifying the land. Which parts of the site would be suitable for interments and sort of the scale of the activity, and once we understand then what could be developed on the land, the third stage is a cultural impact and suitability assessment that we propose to work with Hapurua on, and that would, once we have a picture of how the activity would look, then we can have a robust conversation about whether that is suitable on that site as well. So that's our thinking for the 3-stage feasibility that will take us up to a year to complete. The idea of the 3 stages is that if any stage finds the site not to be feasible, we would end the study effectively. and come back to council for a decision.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. Yeah, I mean, those 3 stages within a year is probably about the timeline minimum we'd want to be looking at, because if we've got to go to another site, that could take a considerable amount of time, and all haste. Councillor Rea.
Yeah, firstly, thank you, Michelle, thank you, Tyler, for the report. I see that it's a noting contents report, so I'd like to move the report. I do have a partai in terms of the Taruheru Cemetery, so overlooking the maps, the proposed parcel also has its time restriction, because there's buildings here, houses there, so it's effectively just this one paddock, which yes, extends our time to be able to provide that service, but at some point we're going to have to look at another site anyway, regardless. So have any further considerations been given to establishing another public cemetery in a more suitable area? I'm under the assumption that during the time of heavy rain warnings, you know, there was a long period where we actually couldn't bury tūpapaku in the Taruheru Cemetery, which left a lot of distress on some of our community members having to have their loved ones stored and waiting for somewhere for them to lie. So if we are to start considering another site, I would appreciate that we look away from land parcels that are specifically right next to waterways and that are adversely affected by a high water table, and a place where there would be more than enough capacity to cater for years to come. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Councillor Rea. Councillor Foster.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment as well. It's nice to have another land parcel close to what you've already got. This particular area is our identified area for our future infrastructure, future development strategy. You know, this whole area out here, Britain West, is where the development is, and we've got a huge development going on the corner of Vanson Road at the moment.
Let me quick, Cuz.
So yeah, I do question why we'd want to put a cemetery in the middle of which is going to be a high density development area, when we all know that it's only going to be a temporary fix and we need to look at a big one. So I'd be probably going along the lines that we need to probably look at an alternative site for that reason. If we're going to have population growth, this is the area where it's going to expand, and having a cemetery right in the middle might not really be the best fit.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Green.
If no one seconded it, I will second. Thanks for this report, toilets and cemeteries. It's been a good month for you. I really support what the two councillors have said, for the reasons that they've said, and also because back in the day when I was at the Bureau, I remember there was a lot of issues with drainage, with houses having trouble with water, to get water away during that time, and I don't know if it's still going. I'm sure the council still has information on that. But yeah, I think we probably need to look longer term when it comes to this. It just doesn't look really very big when you look at the size of the cemetery across the road. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weary. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Have you got some idea if you didn't go with the across the road extension, where you might go? Have you identified potential areas where there's not water level, ground level issues, there's not going to be necessary future development issues? Have you sort of done a sort of tentative scoping?
We haven't undertaken that site options analysis as yet. That would be seen as the likely next step after the feasibility if the 587 Nelson Road weren't justifiable. From a groundwater perspective, the city will be challenging. The Taupara Sands aquifer that affects the Taruhiru Cemetery runs across huge parts of Mangapapa, Riverdale, even into Makaraka, Awapuni. So groundwater isn't unique to that site by any means. It's one large sandy system that moves together, and so that will be a complex exercise too. Yep.
I'm thinking more northerly, the sort of the land seems to slope more upwards towards Hexton Way and up there. I mean, we really should be future-proofing this. This is only going to buy us time, and maybe we should run those exercises simultaneously at least, because our city is going to keep on growing, our region is going to keep on growing, and it would be actually great to design and identify a bespoke site.
Did I hear at another meeting that cremation is kind of growing, burials going down? Is that
Cremation is trending upward.
Yeah.
We've moved from sort of a 60-40 or a 30-70 to the inverse within 10 years. So cremation is trending up, and that is obviously consumes less space in the cemetery and is less affected by groundwater.
So the consideration of that 10 years, did that take that into account?
Yeah, absolutely. So the second stage of the feasibility study will look at the interment capacity of the site based on the groundwater conditions, but then also modelling that against things like burial trends, but also looking at the site conditions against climate factors and projections as well. So there will be a lot of modelling to do from what we know today and where we think that the future use and situation of that site will be.
Thank you for the report. In terms of burial trends, is there a thought in the study on the impact or the effect that marae, hapu cemeteries might have on the future use of taruhiru? Given the growing Māori population, it's likely that many of them will want to go back to their marae and into their hapu areas, and whether or not the projected use might be swayed in a certain direction if that trend and if that's happening, then we become more aware of the important role that the hapu cemeteries play in wider community developments, and whether or not they should have a consideration in our future planning, particularly around like this cemetery, their expansion and where they, how they grow and how they continue to support the wider community. So just raising that in terms of the study, and also whether or not the study will include the cost effectiveness of taruhiru, and whether or not the, for want of a better term, the user pay charges that are applied there are sufficient or insufficient in assisting with any growth of that activity. Like most activities, it's reliant on an ability to expand, and if the study could have a look at what that cost is and whether or not the costs recovery is sufficient for any expansion, and as other councillors have identified, even further expansion beyond Taruhiru. And some of the alternative locations are very expensive quality land areas for all sorts of other activities, horticulture, agriculture and things like that. And whether or not we can afford areas of this nature, and that may impact on the nature of a burial practice. Cremation, it appears, is growing. Are there other forms of burial or internment or laying to rest that could be considered in the study and the cost effectiveness of that?
Just one quick comment. A climate-friendly way of being buried is composting, and apparently there's a bit of a trend worldwide. And personally, if I had a choice, that would be the way I'd go. And that would require an area of native bush where
Exactly.
put to fertilise, which could also be an ash depository as well. That's where I reckon we want to be heading, agreeing with stuff. Thank you.
We'll make sure your request is managed. Councillor Telfer, yeah.
Yeah, look, I'd be considering what's happened. We saw through the cyclones and with the water table there, and if we listen to all the experts, so-called experts, that tell us that the sea level is rising so much, that's going to get worse. I mean, that's not no-brainer. Just because we own this piece of land next door, that's the sole reason why we should spend a whole year investigating whether that's suitable or not. When it's really obvious to me, I think, and other people, that maybe it's not a suitable place. So are we better not to go and spend that time investigating a longer term fix?
Yeah, true.
You know, there are areas in Brisbane that are higher, that aren't the high quality, like Nick said, horticultural land, and can be identified. And we spend that time fixing a long-term problem rather than a short-term fix. Because I think that's going to identify the same issues that just because we own it, I don't think it's a reason why we should say that's where it maybe should go.
Through the chair, I just would like to respond to that one. So the first phase is the modelling, there's effectively a hold point. So I think it's really important for us to really make sure that is accurate and true, and whether there's any mitigations that can be done to overcome that at that site before we move on from it. It has been flagged for some time as a piece of land held by Gisborne District Council, which is right beside the existing cemetery site. So in terms of anticipated future use, there is some understanding of that. Cemeteries are incredibly challenging to plan for, particularly for neighbouring sites. So in terms of reverse sensitivity and those elements that you need to navigate with a new cemetery site, it will add complexity to any future cemetery that we propose to develop. So that will take a lot of time. So I guess what we were trying to do is make sure that we've absolutely squared away the site we do have first, and then move on if that's not suitable, particularly for the region.
Just a moment. Anyone that hasn't spoken? I've got a couple of ones that can guide it, and they assure me that it's new information too. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I just want to second what Rob said. The cemetery's actually quite far out. To me, that's definitely land that's getting developed, and that's should really be what's happening with that land. And if you sell that, you can be twice as big. Further out, that's probably more suitable. It doesn't have the water issues, everything else, and further out, you're not going to have the neighbours who are sort of objecting to it, because there isn't going to be so many neighbours. So yeah, I just want to sort of second what Rob's just said.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was new until Mr. Councillor Older spoke. Because I meant, and I was on the list. I should have said about when you look for an other zone, certainly allow for the concept of a green burial, where you bury and you plant a tree on top and it regenerates. So a block of land which allow for that native bush, I think would be a no-brainer. I would want to be buried that way, either that or a sea burial. But anyway, it can be arranged.
We'd love to see you buried.
That's on the record, Mr. Chair. You have an opportunity to withdraw that.
Councillor Foster.
I don't think ratepayers would be too happy if we're just going to go ahead and spend money and do a feasibility study for a year when we've already identified that this is not really an appropriate place to expand on a cemetery. And the land is valuable. The more development that happens out there, and the more value that land's going to become. And
it hasn't been identified as unsuitable yet. That's the purpose of the feasibility study.
But we're all saying that, hey, this is a high this is part of the future development strategy. We're going out here, we're looking at spending money over a year to see if this site's okay or not, when we're already, most of us are always saying, hey, well, no, we don't think it is. So, yeah, why would you want to continue spending money? And it would be quite serious money, I should imagine, doing a feasibility study on this site, when we could be just focusing, take that off our list and focus on a whole new different site somewhere. You know, and that would be way more value, better ratepayer money spent than try and determine whether this is suitable or not when we're already saying it's not because of its location.
Councillor Gregory.
Thank you. I just want to double check. We were doing that mortuary waste thing where there was a Wisconsin mound. I thought that was going to be on that site.
Through the chair, the mortuary waste project in Wisconsin Mound sits as a project driven by wastewater. It was identified the Tauhiri Cemetery was identified as a location for that, but I think that is an independent consideration of the cemetery land use. The mortuary waste comes from other sites to be deposited at a location. It could well be required it could be better placed at the new location, but I think quite an independent consideration of the future land needs of this new site.
Right, thanks. It's been given a good go. I think from what I'm hearing, perhaps we do need to look at a more tandem investigation with the other side as well, rather than the total focus being on the one side. That would be what I've heard around the table.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think really appreciate the strong steer on that and the desire to look at other land options, and that's something we will go back and consider really fully. I think in the question around the financial prudence of undertaking the feasibility study, the advice that we got was that developing a new cemetery site is quite likely to have impacts and costs which are unpopular to some, and it's really important that council has a strong position as to why it didn't pursue the land which it housed and which it had intended for a purpose. We're talking about potential acquisition of an expensive piece of land or redesignation of a piece of land which people care a lot about. We will have to have really strong justification for why we didn't use the land which we had. And so that was core to our approach and stance.
Sorry.
All right. Yeah.
I haven't spoken.
Okay.
Just on that note, so they say that the land was set aside some time ago. Was that pre-cyclone? And when were these decisions made pre-cyclones? Because we, just from observation, we're no experts in this field, but Taruhiru has shown us time and time again the results post-cyclone. So, I support what the other councillors are saying around better spend of that money, because we have a lot of money and we need to make it, get value for money. If we know if that decision was made pre-cyclone, then it needs to be revisited before we go off and do a whole research.
Through the chair, that was a pre-cyclone decision. That land has been looked at least as early as the mid-90s as a future cemetery. What we've done in shaping the feasibility study is to do the technical aspects first, and we have a whole point, so we can end the feasibility study as soon as possible when we see that the site is potentially unfavourable. So we are trying to do as little work as possible if that very reasonable assumption is correct, that the site has unsuitable groundwater.
Thanks, Tyler.
Just to clarify, Mr. Chair, right across the road is not zoned for a cemetery, right, as it stands. So it's just a green development like any other green development, and all its issues and protests and costs will still be the same if it was this block or another block, correct?
Through the chair, yes, it's not zoned as cemetery or classified presently.
Moved by Councillor Rea, seconded by Councillor Gregory. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. And applications for Inner Street Lease 105.
So I'm just bringing an update to you on the matter of the inner street leases. Council staff, we wouldn't normally bring you an update of this sort where we've had no public submission on these applications, but given the numerous conversations we've had at this table around these leases, we're doing so in this case. So essentially, we publicly notified your intention to grant, or council's intention to grant the leases, and we received no submissions or objections either in support or objecting to the grant of the leases. So as such, we are now in the process of negotiating legal contracts with the lessees, potential lessees. The one, just a slight tangent, the men's shed, they weren't part of that original tranche of public notification. They weren't sure at that time if they were still going to exist as a legal entity. They've now confirmed that they still wish to enter into a lease, so we've notified that quite recently, and that's currently out for public notification.
Well, thanks for that.
Very happy.
Thank you.
Second.
Oh yes, and Michelle's just reminded me, so I just want to give you a heads up, I'm not intending to come back to you should there be no submissions on the matter of the men's shed. So hopefully you will never see me again on this matter.
Councillor Robinson.
So in the unlikely event that there is some sort of response publicly in relation to the notification for the men's shed, you'll let us know?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. That's been moved by Worship and seconded by Councillor Taufa. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Cup of tea. Well done, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, any apologies? We've got apologies from Councillor Wharehinga. And Parata are online.
Councillor Tibble and Parata is online.
Councillor Tibble are online. Apologies are moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Robinson. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Declarations of interest. None. Application of minutes. Okay, we'll read the minutes on page 4. Any matters arising from those? The mover? I'll move them. I'll move the mover. Seconder. Move them. All in favour? We have the action sheet on page 7.
All good.
All good. Government's work plan. Check that out. Leave of absence. We have done. Acknowledgements and tributes. We don't have any. Public input and petitions. No. Extraordinary business. No. Notice of motion. No. Adjourn business. Right. Straight to page 14.
There's an acknowledgement here.
Sorry, Larry. Can I just acknowledge in the King's service?
Oh yes.
King's honours.
Yes.
Birthday honours.
Yes.
Also, Kaiwai.
Yes.
On the coast end.
Fred Lewis.
Lewis. So all of our locals who have there we go. Awesome. All of them. Please, if you can acknowledge them. We have and a round of applause.
Right, we'll go straight to page 14 for our water infrastructure project update.
So maybe I'll just quickly go through the summary and then I can answer any questions. So the report's just around highlighting the construction progress made to date in the water supply, wastewater and stormwater areas. Just noted that the report also tends to show the challenging weather conditions, the impact that's had following Cyclone Gabriel in a very wet 2023, which has meant that some of these projects in regards to construction will push into the new financial year. They're all ready to go, but conditions have had an impact. team's tracking well, having formed the Waters team, a lot of new people come in early in this year, and we're tracking well in preliminary work on the programs for 24-25. So yeah, setting ourselves up well for the future. And there's the body of the report, and I can respond to any questions you might have within.
Well, I've got a question and comment. It was really noticeable after the last rain event that we had a week and a half ago, that the scows weren't open. And I've just got and you know, the interceptor at Haruni Street was going over, it was over flooded, and I thought, well, that's usually the sign that the scows are going to be open, and they weren't. And so that's got to be you know, a great recognition of the success that the Drainwise project is going. You know, because that was a lot of rain. That was the most rain that we've had where the scows have never been open before. So congratulations. So that's such a you know, that was good work in progress. We'd like to see.
Got the 5.5 times dry weather flow, didn't we?
Yes, yeah.
And 6 is the overflow time.
So we're really happy with the way it's managed, and we've got future reports will tend to show what that trending was in regards to those wastewater flows, as well as to how it was quite peaky. This is great having the team so we can develop this information and informs our programs going forward, especially in the Drainwise board.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a lot of positive progress made in that space.
So what's changed? You know, what work has changed since the last time the scows were open? You know, because the rain events in the past haven't been that great, really. Okay, and we've had to open the scows, considering what we had following the rain.
That is the impact in 23 of sustained rain, and the water table was really high. So any rainfall, there was an instantaneous almost transmission into the network.
Right, so it's a water table not being high.
Yeah, so you're already taking up some capacity with infiltration, which is happening with high water table.
Yep.
And then a smaller, I would say too, we don't have complete science about the rainfall event and how it happened. There are some storage in the network and the timing of moving the wastewater through, so it might have been partly by good fortune, not solely attributed to Drainwise had some influence.
Okay, Councillor.
Just on page 18, it says we're close, number 26, it says we're close to achieving consent compliance targets. Does that mean we currently aren't meeting compliance targets? Or?
That is the wastewater treatment plant stage 2 project, which is in process.
Going to be future compliance.
So that project is about meeting that compliance. So what it is that project meets that compliance before we move to closing that project off, and then formally being a compliance requirement. So the project is about meeting the consent conditions. So that's putting in all the further treatment to achieve the compliance targets. The project is still rolling to achieve that, but we are really close to the point in the last, since I wrote into the report, the most recent data is showing that we are compliant, but we obviously need just a more continuation of that to give confidence.
So that's looking favourable. We're not going to be not meeting
favourable
daily, or
to meet compliance. There are within that report a piece of principal supplied equipment that's not performing, but despite that, with the work that has been done on within the other parts of pieces of equipment, they're performing above expectation and delivering the results we're currently getting. That makes sense.
Councillor,
can I just one more question? You're just on the Drainwise. For years, it's been a public concern that the sewage going into the waterway and Drainwise was a reason. mechanism to hopefully stop or reduce that. Yeah, well, I'm just wondering why we're not solely focusing on the pipes in that area to sort that problem out before we look at other areas. To me, that's our priority. We should be focusing on that before we move to other areas, sorting out what it was initially designed to do.
And it's a more complicated scenario than that in regards to the multiple contributors to the impacts on the wastewater network. There's the pipe age and the pipe infrastructure. There's the inflow in, which is the direct feeds from households and localised flooding that tops gully traps and comes through. So Kaiti has been a focus initially in regards to those inspections and a lot of the renewals work on the pipelines. And going forward, it still remains a focus, but there is also imbalance with other aged infrastructure in other parts of the district, which also contribute to overloading the network that compounds that situation there, because there's a large part of the network that crosses in a similar path from the Kaiti and inhibits its ability to move through to the plant. So there's multiple contributing factors. It's just not solely Kaiti as a focus. We would still have the risk of overflows if we didn't have a balanced effect across the network in our program.
So there's obviously a bigger picture, and it's not just what people are seeing, that everything's interconnected and relates to it.
And there's a particular focus on overflows there, obviously. And we're focused on Kaiti already, but you start to get to diminishing returns on that investment. Then you start looking at areas and investing in it, and then you've got to look around and find out where you can have the most influence. What limits work for this program is ongoing, long term, and it's really focused on getting the most for the dollar. If we were to put more concentration on in Kaiti, I guess we'd be chasing really small outcomes.
Councillor Telfer.
Yeah, just on page 20, the map there showing all the different sites. For the time that frame was it's been going, I'm quite surprised how many of the red sites are still to be inspected. I would have thought that part of the initial getting them all inspected would be one of the first things we do to identify which sites are. That's what it just says here.
That relates to the public drains on private property, so that's that localised flooding. The investigation side is actually quite a substantial part of that. The focus had been, like we were just talking about, had been Kaiti, as in a large contributor in Kaiti to the issues we've got is inflow, so that those localised flooding getting high enough to top gully traps and then going directly into the wastewater system, so it's an instantaneous feed. And yes, so that's why you're seeing that a lot of the blue, so the completed projects actually occurred in Kaiti. When I came on board, this was a case of getting the team to produce this as a visual effect to say, well, where do we stand in regards to the network program, so that we've got, because there's only so much capacity to work through these projects there. You can only do 2 or 3 a year just in regards to the amount, the value that they hold. So having a continuous program and prioritising in a way that gives best effect for the money spent. So there's years of work here to complete all of these the projects that will come out of the investigations.
What I guess it does show is it answers Councillor Thompson's question quite well, that we've been focusing on the Kaiti portion as most critical. Now we're moving to the others. We've identified the areas we need to see, which should give us confidence we know where we want to go.
It's just good to know that, seeing that there, like if we're forward planning and you know, this is one area, opening these valves is one of the biggest things that frustrates people and how long we've been doing it. So I think going forward, to be able to really understand, you know, is this a priority we make, so we do actually, when we are allocating, doing budgets, allocating funding, that we look at maybe this is an area that we increase to the detriment of something else that we think is not so important. So understanding the complexity is pretty important information for us to have going forward.
All Having as approach coming into the 24-25 program is putting an investment into an evaluation of this and then prioritising those particular investigations that have been identified to focus on the ones that deliver the best return. So we're taking a prioritising approach to ensuring that where the money does go, it is delivering discernible outcomes and limiting the issues within the network. So we're going to take a very measured approach to it, to inform, and we'll show that in the future as well.
Yeah, we've obviously got a designated crew that are doing this work. You know, what I'm looking at is there an option there to maybe double that? You know, we could double it and speed it up by that much. So, you know, the cost of doing that, back to we can see if that's a decision we can make and whether we prioritise that over something else. That's all.
But I guess we're working to the cadence of actually being able to rectify as well, because it's one thing inspecting, then we've got to engage with them, and that's a negotiating. It's in private property, so that that resource can only reach some sort of cadence. If we doubled it, you could speed that up, but the way we're doing it is pretty effective, but it is limited in speed, if you like. So once we identify property, we can't just make the change. It's got to be a mutual agreement with the property owner of how that, and it's initially on them. Many can't afford to do it, and we have to work out a way of potentially funding it ourselves or others. So there's a big bunch of work outside of identifying and getting the outcomes we want.
And that's why within the program we are, by taking this approach, we have got that priority of projects and working on multiple projects at the same time. So we've got a good platform to ensure, in our world, there's a certain window of opportunity to do this work, which is in spring and summer. So you've got to do all the legwork up front so that you've got the ability to get those projects through. So it's a rolling approach to this to ensure that we've got the ability to deliver on an annual basis. And you have where the plumbing's right. As I say, 2023 certainly had an impact on the ability to do much of anything.
But showing this information shows we can be accountable. We can put a time slider in here and show what we did last year and this year.
How much are legal connections contributing to the problem? And what's the plan about that?
A big portion of the problem, but fewer than the initial the responsibility of the landowner. But they were often unaware of this. A lot of the stuff is professionally plumbed in. Professionally plumbed in by contractors and people who bought homes. So I don't have exact figures, Jeff.
It's still happening because we're looking at an education program again, what the plumbers and roofers. We've seen where roofs go up, and yes, happenstance that the downpipes are directed straight into gully. As soon as we discover that, then we're having discussions with those contractors. It's about having them on board, part of that. So direct inflow is an issue, and it's the one that hits first and fastest.
So supplementary, if we sped up the inspection and started firing a few fines out, or threats of fines, that problem could, when you buy something, if if you didn't check that it was right, it's still your responsibility to put it right. And we could speed this whole thing up if we got owners to take up their own responsibility on it.
That's the process we're working through now in regards to how we approach those owners that are being difficult. I can say that the operational budget for those inspections has been increased for this, or proposed to be increased for this coming year, so we will be looking at doing more inspections to keep that kind of rolling, because it is, we see it as a key part of our operation.
Thank you.
Drain-wise is active today. It's not on hold pending the start of the year, because I understood it had been halted temporarily. It's active, okay. So the map on page 20, all the red areas are public drains on private lands. That's not the issue, isn't it? It is private discharge, as you've said. I thought previously we'd had a visual map showing the offending areas. It's not this one. This isn't the problem, is it?
The map shows localised flooding that can overtop gully traps. So we've got two different things here. One is around downpipes going straight into the wastewater system. So that's the inflow and infiltration inspection program that we're going to progressively remove those. And not just remove them, but get them into the network, into the stormwater network. This public drains on private property is specifically looking at where there is localised flooding that affects multiple houses that has or does top your gully trap and again creates inflow. So if this program is around investigating those to see if they are real, which is the red, that's the investigation, and if they are putting in public stormwater infrastructure on private property to take it into our stormwater network. So eliminating that issue for the future. So it's just as important as the those direct downpipes going into.
Tim, supplementary question, Mr. Chair. Tim, before you, or maybe Leo, you said it about one thing getting the flow out of Kaiti, but then it hits the blockage coming off Whatuupoko. And I know at this table before, Whatuupoko has been identified as an area that has actually a significant contribution towards the opening the scales from Kaiti. And it's just a well-known fact that Whatuupoko residents probably have much more financial ability to address their own problems on their own homes. Can you tell us how many of the properties there have been inspected for their downpipe issues?
They were completed this year. So we've gone through that. It's going to be a continuous process, but we actually have gone through there. Those offending properties have been resolved. So we've done that. We are proposing with the confirmation of budget that when it comes to pipe lining, the oldest infrastructure we've got is in Whatuupoko, and that's what we're going to target. That'll be shown within the wastewater committee report. So we're working on that as well.
Okay, so let's assume you've got a compliance rate you want to achieve in Whatuupoko for downpipe and gully trap overflow, and you achieve that on private properties. After that, essentially it's about a network issue, isn't it? It's about flood areas and also the pipes under the ground working with that. And I think, Tim, you said last year there was the generic or the existing high water table which contributed continually to water ingressing, and we had a really dry April, last summer. The rest of summer just gone was quite dry, and that probably saved us when it got to 5.5 times the flow rate. And you've done some good work on Kaiti. So at what point will you be able to say, actually, now about 80% of this is council's problem with our pipes, and now here's a budget to try and fix the most offending? How are you going to identify them?
So when we look at, all these programs are running in tandem. So we're doing the public drains on private property, the inflow and infiltration inspections, are continuous, removing those out. In conjunction with that, which the budget is proposed to be increased for the next, through this 3-year program, is pipeline renewal, so addressing the old infrastructure pipes that we've got when we're looking at our renewals program, which is constant. So there's $9 million requested for over the next 3 years for pipeline renewals, which is a part of improving the network, the age of the network, bringing it up to into a suitable use of life. So it's running in tandem.
And so through all this work, you've identified which ones are the prioritised because they're the ones that are mostly contributing towards the backing up into Kaiti, resulting in the scales opening. Have you managed to identify the most offending parts of the network?
Focus, and when we look at the network, is age.
It's really asset age and condition. Okay. So for the renewals, it's less what is happening, and probably don't have the detail of that granularity. But when you're doing renewals, you want to do nice, considerable length, so you get good value for money when you're doing it. So often a renewal budget will be pre-planned, and there's often nice to have a little element of, actually we'll change this and that, but generally you want to be pre-planned, get your teams up, they just go and do that work. It just runs in the background, and you're constantly doing it, it never stops. So in answer to your question, you could answer that question any 1 year, it's the same answer. This is how much money we're putting into renewals, always doing something in renewals. It's pretty important that we keep that up.
Final question, Mr. Chair. Do we have a time frame for resolving the design issues with Becca? Because that may well happen.
Straight off the top of my head, but it's a critical focus, and we're working through it. With regard to the tertiary filters, it's a challenged one in regards to where the funds come from. If we can get funds from those parties in regards to that for insurances. We're working through that process.
So no time frame, but it's ongoing.
Okay, as soon as we can.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Leo.
Councillor Talha?
Yeah, just Tim, you mentioned before that you're finding some of these properties where plumbers have directly plumbed into the wastewater with stormwater pipes. Is this even recently you're finding that, or is it the sort
that was last year? Yeah.
So that's still happening. Personally, these companies or whoever they are need to be called out and made it public and fined massively, because no business in this town can sit there and say, they're not aware of what the problem is and what we're trying to do with drain-wise. So as part of any consent, I would presume, historically, as part of any sign-off of a consent, it should be noted on that consent who the electrician was that was part of that building, who the builder was and who the plumber was. I presume, and you should be able to pull them straight out.
I should say these aren't new builds, so this is
No, but even historically, every building that's been built in this town historically should have been signed off and had building inspections done. So I would presume that part of a building inspection, I'd like to hope it is, a sign off and a consent is who the builder was that built it, who the plumber and who the electrician were.
We're certainly not seeing it on new builds or anything like that. This is if a contractor's gone in to replace a roof, and suddenly the downpipes have been redirected into the gully traps because they've seen it as the easiest one. So we've worked in that instance. We work closely with that contractor so that they were very aware of the consequences of it, and they've been good. So taking an educational approach to that, while also looking at, for the future, having interactions with those contractors to ensure that they're aware of their responsibilities.
So this has not been a historical new build.
No, it's renovation.
It's commonly unconsented works on houses that do a carport or whatever, and they just
so I'll just fire it.
I should say, and it is working with residents too, because sometimes they see it as the easiest way if they've got flooding in their backyard to actually eliminate that issue. If they take a different path, it causes flooding and damage to their property. So we're working with them in regards to how we transition that into the network as well. So it's actually working with the residents, knowing that the outcome is positive for council and positive for him as well, and it's long term, as we've resolved it as well, because we've solved this issue.
Councillor Tabala.
Through you, your chair, two questions. The first one is around gully track design, which I have no knowledge whatsoever. But if they're proving to be an issue with regard to the events around the climate, is there any thought about looking at the design of gully traps and whether or not they're fit for purpose, given the frequency of weather events and their inefficiency in terms of the increased weather events that we're facing at the moment?
The team is certainly exploring those. There are issues with, there are ones that have, one-way valves, etc., but they cause other issues within a home, but it is certainly something that's being looked at. It is also in conjunction with those public drains on private property projects, is if we can get the stormwater into our network and the network can transition it into the receiving bodies, that's our best possible control. But if there are areas that can't be solved for solutions, those are the ones that we're looking at in regards to what other options are.
If they're built as designed, they don't present that problem. So the design always already covers the concern that you have, because they're proud. A lot of parties tend to reset them, and so they don't. That's a problem. So the fix is simple too. Just build a little, just on top of it, glue it all together.
So, the comment to that then is whether or not, like the other building inspection processes that we have, where pipes are going into wastewater and all sorts of things, that gully trap inspections could make suggestions about that particular in areas that are more vulnerable. I think, my second question is around, we've got a paper further on today that mentions about water shortages in our future, and whether or not encouraging the community to collect and store water rather than let it go and then end up in the system is something that would a practice like that be useful in the work that you're doing here.
I think water is really important for all sorts of reasons here, economic, wealthy, everything. And I'd like the fact that you brought up community, because when you bring community into solving infrastructure problems, things get better in terms of cost per individual. There's the water use patterns of our customers aren't completely known, but we could probably ascertain some things from summer information. So if we capture water, it's likely to be sort of roof water into tanks. We don't want that drunken. We don't want it for safety reasons, but it's perfect for garden purposes, potentially filling the swimming pool. And that's something that certainly would be of value in the future for resiliency purposes. When you have long periods of drought, though, you find that they tend to run out of water. So ultimately, they don't cover all the needs you might want.
Councillor Robinson.
So I can share with you all that from personal experience, the Drainways program, they will go around to the old concrete style gully traps, and they will they cement on top another same size to raise it, double its height. They will silicon on to the new plastic ones, but as Tim said, if someone's built to consent, they take into the floodplains, and they should be higher. They normally require to be at least 450 above ground level. Councillor Tupara, all new builds are required to have a stormwater attenuation tank now, which is minimum sort of 3,000 litres for a 100 square metre home. It's about 3,000 litres. So they're all required to have them now. So all new properties in Gisborne, Tauranga will be having stormwater storage.
Thank you for that. It's just a noting report. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Ridley, second by the Mayor. All in favour?
Aye.
And then we on to page 24, Land, Rivers and Coastal Update.
The next one is Journeys on 31.
Oh, sorry.
Land Coastal Update.
Page, what agenda are we on?
20, page 20, 23.
Thank you. Right. 23.
24 on the computer.
Land Coastal Update.
You can shortchange the page.
These are all noting reports.
Land Rivers Coastal Update.
I'm Mangala, here with the Land Rivers Coastal, and this year has been a challenging year for us. Lot of work, staff was down only to me, so we have done, we got 330 kilometers of drains, land drainage system, and out of that 45 kilometers we have dug up, filtered, and it was all done. Yeah, so a lot of floodgate failures, including it's connected to drains, so many floodgate failed, so we have done all the recovery work. And on top of that, 2 major revetments completely damaged behind Marina car park. Our revetment 54 meters completely gone. Also, Anzac Park, 180 meters of the revetment, you can't find even a trace. So these 2 contracts, Marina car park, I have started in late May, and completed by August at a cost of 698,000, and it's 54 meters, and we got a much more robust sheet pile revetment instead of timber revetment, because timber was not available at that time. And the other one is Anzac Park, we just started, and I'm planning to complete it like another 2 months' time. And my budget is 1.17 million. So this year I handled 3 million. So it's a really challenging and successful year from perspective of land.
Thank you, Mangala, for that. And I do want to give you lovely feedback. When I went up the coast, people do notice that drains are being cleaned and there's a lot of work happening. So it's really visible work, and people do notice that. One thing I wanted to ask of you is that, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but in going forward, we are looking at doubling the drainage budget for the flats. But what concerned me is that you were just saying you've already done 200% of work in this financial year with limited staff, sickness or whatever it is. For us planning going forward, doing more than double the work, or a double budget, I'm not saying double the work, are you confident that we will have the workforce in place to do that higher demand of work?
Of course, if we have money, so that's the great example, because I handled 250% of the work because we got money. NEMA covered part of the money and insurance covered most of the revetments. So, and just with the same staff. So if we have resources, especially finances, we could do more.
Right. And I'm happy to move. There's a noting paper. I'm happy to move as well. Thank you.
Robertson.
Seconding. Seconding that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just on that note, on page 31, you mentioned there's all this extra work with limited staff. And then on the very next page, in the next paper, it says that they're getting increasing requests from councillors trying to find work, so that could contractors, sorry, so that could resolve that issue on the very next page.
Councillor Benson.
Thanks. When we're doing these repairs and recovery projects and that, are we future-proofing? I was just thinking about the marina revetment damage. Did we consider doing that to a higher level as future-proofing?
Yeah, we have included 200 millimeters for climate change scenarios because we just previous year we have done under 10-year plan the other side of the revetment. So we had all these designs and climate change scenarios and future-proof scenarios. So we have incorporated into this revetment.
Okay.
Yeah, something that's been read this, I'm just trying to work out whether this is obviously reality of the times, but $700,000 for the marina, 54 metres marina, that's $13,000 a metre. I really struggle with that. You know, that's horrendous, and I'd like to not think they've just started on the other side of the river upstream. I'd like to think that's not going to be the same sort of cost, because if it is, I think someone's taking the mickey, personally.
The other side of the revetment, it's 120 meters. We spent only 400,000. So that was way cheaper, but luckily we got full cover through the insurance because forest industry was fully damaged during cyclone. So we convinced them that we can't wait for timber because timber has to be treated for 5 months. And then practically we could complete marina revetment after maybe 2 years because the roads were not there, accessibility issues. So we convinced the insurance companies this is the only way to go forward. So they paid all 698,000 through insurance. And initially we had only 6 meter piles, and this marina revetment we got 12 meter piles because not like timber just go and stop at somewhere because it's thick. But sheet pile just go underneath, and we were planning to do it by 8 meter sheet piles, but we had to weld and made it 12 meters. So that was the cost. And also the capping beam, because it's 12 meters sheet piles, you need a robust capping rail, and we put a concrete capping rail, and it's fully covered through insurance. And so it's an advantage actually for the next 50 years.
Engineered.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Councillor Ria.
Yeah, I was just wondering, in having a look at the map on page 25, and just referring back to the map we just looked at, the highlighted map of the PDPP for projects and investigations. I think the previous map showed us exactly where issues have been addressed and projects have been completed, and I just don't get that same feeling from this map. I would be really interested, both myself, Councillor Elder and Councillor Taufa attended a community meeting, and even Mr. Berry at Makaraka, which had the Makaraka community people talking about their drainage off Taruhiru, and then issues around Harper Road, Waimata Valley Road, Snowsill Road and Tuckers Road. And if the map was presented similar to the map from the previous report, we'd actually be able to see exactly what areas of drainage have been completed and to what level, if they've been started or if they're a concern or if they're completed. That's just an observation that would be really helpful, so that when we do go back to those communities, we can say, look, it is in the process, it's on the run sheet, and it will be coming up, or actually some work has begun on the drainage in that area. Kia ora.
All right, Councillor Hall.
Yeah, just wanted to comment. Yeah, great to see 45 kilometres taken care of. what is our business as usual goal in kilometres per year? And again, going back to and agreeing totally with Councillor Rea, that if we, as farming flats people, know that it's going to be cleared sometime soon, that gives us so much more security. So yeah, what's the plan going forward?
Just, I have prepared a 10-year plan because all the drain clearing was ad hoc for up to now. I mean, I'm not blaming anybody, but in the contract, it's only spraying, no digging, because from especially Manatuke, we get 90,000 from rates. Out of that, we spent 60,000 on TRI and 30,000 we have to do maintenance and also maintain 3 pump stations. So we have very limited, like, little money. With little money, it's all neglected actually. So it's a positive for us because drains came back to normal conveyance capacity, and I have prepared a 10-year plan and how to prioritize each and every drain. And so it's in the process. We are working on it for the first year because we need to do surveys in almost all drains to see the capacity. So far we have done on eye measurements, but in the future it's on survey plans, and we could exactly give community that your drain will be done in 2030 or 2030 or so it's on a 10-year plan. And for the first year, this year, next financial year, we are doing on eye measurements because we don't have resources to do all the surveys, but from second year onwards, this will be implemented.
Thank you.
Councillor Gregory and Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I just want to go back to that map that Aubrey was talking about on page 25. Is it just my computer or is the key missing for everyone?
No, it's missing.
Because I think that might be useful for us to know what all those colours mean.
Different regions.
Those are drainage districts. We have 17 drainage districts, so the colour indicates the boundary of the drainage district.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson.
It's really reassuring to hear you've got a 10-year plan. In preparing that, obviously you've done your eye visuals. Have you also correlated that with the RFSs? And particularly I'm thinking of the conversation I had with you, I think Tim, recently regarding the Karakia property owners there with the drain running the wrong way. That's a really contentious multi-RFS site which...
We look at RFSs and also work coders for the last year because Fulton Hogan, we create work coders for them. So we collate everything. If we take Pilmer Road, how many RFSs, how many work coders we have done. So that's how it became priority. Yeah, so it's...
Thank you very much for your work.
It's awesome.
That's really good.
Councillor
Mangala, congratulations on getting that insurance money to cover most of that work. I just wondered about, what was it about? Now I've lost my train of thought. Geez, too much coffee. Further to Councillor Rea's point about having a map that indicates what's been done. Like on the website you have with the roading, it has a detailed thing of what's been done, when it's been done. Could a similar table or map be made available on the website so then we can direct communities to there to know when work is happening or happened, what's been completed?
Yeah, we'll work on it, because the problem is if that drain is 1 kilometer long, we may have done only 400 meters because that's the priority area, not area. So it's not the entire drain. So we can't just put, it's done on like rough figures. I could make a map and, just post in the website. Yeah. Not immediately, but yes.
Okay, again,
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Councillor Rea's comment there around that would be having a map that people can look at and see that this is happening and have some time frames on it. I'm just thinking about these 2 areas that the day I came into this room, Pilmer Road and Makaraka, as Tony's touched on there, those two areas are probably the two most I get by at me, and up and right to this day I can't give those people. It's really frustrating.
I got a text yesterday about it.
So that's, and you know, to be fair to them, they've put up with it for a long time, and a lot of flooding on properties. So you know, if we can at least have a time frame and have a prioritised ranking situation where we're going to.
Market to Stream, Pilmer Road, we got quite a few inquiries, and but we had to change the consent conditions because of Inanga spawning. It would work only in October and November, and some years October and November is fully wet and we can't put machines. So Pilmer Road, we changed the consent condition only for this year, and the work is going to start at Market Stream next Monday, not now, on the 16th. Yep.
So we've been dealing with that.
Yeah.
That's been well communicated to the people involved as well.
Probably would.
Pilmer Road, any time frame?
Pilmer Road, no, because it's only Market Stream. I reserved 60,000 for that, and Leo made all the consenting matters. And so Pilmer Road is anyway just floodable zone, F4 flood zone, and it's very difficult, hydrologically, it's very difficult to do. So technically, it's very unlikely, even through modifications, they are going to be flooded. So technically, it's F4 flood zone. They developed on F4. F4 is floodable areas. So unless if you have a long, like ring stop bank or something, otherwise it's very hard to solve it by digging or technical means. So they will experience more and more floods. That's the reality. So we made aware some companies, they don't accept it because they claim 25 years ago we were not flooded, but that's the reality. So we can't make a floodable zone unfloodable.
Not without expending else, like the city.
Yeah.
Not like if you've got flood water's got to go somewhere. Do you want it in the city or do you want it on the floodplain?
No, we want it in the sea.
These are floodplains, so they're designed to flood by nature. But parties have put economic enterprises there and are confusing flooding with drainage. Drainage is not flood management. Flood management, you lose control of drainage, does nothing for you. Once you've broken the surface, it will make no difference. The difference, people believe the drains are stopping. They'll stop minor level interventions. They won't stop flooding. Flooding's another category. When your landform takes control, is flooding.
I think people accept that there's always going to be some flooding when you're on a big flat,
yeah.
and there's not the huge fall, but the drains that we have got, they need to be able to operate, and when they're clogged with trees and willows and other stuff, and they can't, you want the water to be able to get to the sea as fast as possible. Sure, it's going to flood, but it wants to be able to get away. It's this time that it's taking for this water to get away now is their biggest problem.
In a flood scenario, you can assume everything's blocked. Make little difference to that. Once you've broken the surface and you're on land, that's what's going on with flood production. A lot of things block in the flood time, and people conflate the fact that the drains are there with it might help you speed, but it's not going to help you flood.
And now, just to extend, and our drain system is designed to cater 5-year flood event, 5-year ARI, sorry, annual return period. So it's 5 years, but Gabriel is more than 100 years. So that's why Pilmer Road got flooded 9 times. So all our drainage system is designed for 5-year events. So it's a very minor events. So cleaning drains, it must be done because it relieves only 5-year up to 5-year event. But beyond that, it's like, you know, like any other flat land, so drain doesn't help at all.
Well, thank you. Just on the Palmer's Road situation, I went out there and talked to those people earlier on about their problems as well, and they had a belief that the build-up of the grass in the Tarahiru would, if that was removed, that would help their situation out there, because this grass has gone quite rampant, and I know we've done a study just out here and seen it all die and flood away. Is that true, that getting rid of that grass would alleviate that flooding, and is there plans to extend that, getting rid of it?
Because when during a flood, when Waimata is flowing at its peak, Tarahiru can't. It's just a stagnant water body.
Okay.
So if you dig up, more salt water might enter during tide. You have to model in a different way, and even this Karakia dredging, it's going to be, you can't expect much results. We spent 60,000, you know, next week, but still it doesn't give much relief, you know, the way they expected. So we know that, but it's very hard to convince people that, you know, we pay rates and you don't do anything, like, you know, always that's the complaint we get. So we have to distribute our money, you know, in a nice way, not nice, like, you know, in a way that every community gets some sort of a relief. So that's why, we are doing Makaretu, but all this to be modeled, and there's a model under flood resilience program. Tarahiru model is, Tarahiru Waimata model results will be available by next August. So next year, this is not this August, next year.
I would say
25.
no two rain events are actually the same. So you're essentially having like eyes or lenses of rain appearing across your landscape. If, for instance, Waimata is untouched, perhaps the hydraulics would act differently. Perhaps having that change might have a positive effect. But what are the chances of that? We're getting into sort of semantics. So it's like, one event to another when things peak really depends on what happens some kilometres away from us.
Thanks for that clarification.
Councillor Holder.
Question, is the Waimata grading? Is that contributing to the drainage and possible flooding? And could there be a dredging operation performed on Waimata?
Waimata, actually after the recent flood, you know, Gabriel, capacity became almost like 20 to 40% increase because the channel bank slipping. So now it can contain more water. So the cross section is almost some places 40% increase. So from river management perspective, it's a positive factor because it could contain more water, more rain. But for the next maybe couple of 10 years, but after that siltation will, you know, get back to normal. So because of the bank collapse, the capacity is much higher.
But has that occurred here at the junction? Because the crucial point is at the junction. And my belief was that there's been a degradation in there.
We haven't done any bathymetric surveys, just to, like, you know, other countries, they do bathymetric surveys and do dredging. But here, because of the regulations, RMA and consenting process, that's unique, and the financial part. But upstream capacity, when upstream capacity is bigger, water velocity will be reduced because the area is bigger. So that's sort of a positive factor for us for the next couple of years.
Just to add, Mr. Chair, that also the, I suppose this is where the infrastructure and the environments committees kind of overlap in terms of drainage and also the biodiversity implications when working on the Tarahiru River. Like, I can talk to Tarahiru because I live on the taruhiru, and so the inanga spawning, the taonga species monitoring, the encroachment of gambusia along that river, so, removing some plants actually gives gambusia, which is this horrible pest, better access to further upstream, which could endanger other areas. So just that we need a balance, and working with our drainage team along with catchment planning groups, and making sure that those conversations are happening so that we're ensuring not just the drainage mahi is appropriate and catering to the needs of the citizens, but we're also being mindful of the biodiversity implications on each of our awa.
Councillor Tupara.
Yes, just I'd be interested in your thoughts. And if our drains are targeted at a level of 1 and 5 year events, our budget for general cleaning of drains is 90,000. Do you think we're pitching aggressively enough to allow our community to function appropriately given the climate change? Or is this just an exercise just to keep the place tidy as opposed to really advancing our community, given that the level of event we get now seems to become more and more frequent? Our pitch is just too low.
Yeah, like individually we didn't do in a community level, but individually when the requests came to us, we meet people, and then we just made them aware. But on top of that, we have put up a proposal for climate resilience fund, and from that, most likely we'll get 20,000 meter cube digging up on Taraheru, finances. So, and it has to be back up with the modeling results. And once it is done, we are hopeful that we get some sort of funding, big funding, like, few millions on Taraheru, and we are very much hopeful because it's in the pipeline. It's a matter of time.
Councillor Tibble. Councillor Tibble, can you hear us? Your hands up.
Yes, kia ora. Sorry, I don't know why my camera's not working this morning, but that's okay. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine, thank you.
Oh, fantastic, thank you. I have a question in regards to our general communications to our population and residents. I heard earlier about the explanation in relation to the role of floodplains as opposed to the disbursement of water into the sea. And I was wondering, my question really is around, is it an assumption on our part that residents understand deeply how the water in and water out system affects their personal properties and also the city in relation to flood and in relation to us not having enough money to actually do what we need to make the water system work in a way that we would understand what capacity of protection we have if all things were working as well as we expected?
Yeah, it's a bit tricky question, but basically that's why we put up a proposal for climate resilience funding. Even you double the rate money. If I get 180,000, I can't do much about Taraheru, or we could increase the maintenance, but it doesn't help them. And also on Taraheru, you should understand that people, they don't like to believe that it's a floodplain. That's one problem. But when you dig up details in our system, they had community meetings in 1998 on flooding. So if you browse through the history, they had not that nature flooding, because now rains are more frequent and it's different. But these areas were flooded in 1998, 1962. All records are there. They had community meetings, so they should know by now, they live in floodable plains. And unless we go for a huge, there are technical means. You could avoid, flood plains. You could drain. You could make a floodgate and make a drain to the sea and put a floodgate like Holland. The example is Netherlands. They live underwater. So you could drain. There are technical stuff we could do, but it's whether it's cost effective or applicable to this Gisborne, or that's the question.
Thank you, Mangala. Thank you very much for that. Just a subsidiary. So I suppose my question is, do we do enough communicating to residents, whether you be a property owner or renting, how the water system works on water in and water out for the properties? Do we understand that well enough? And how would we know that our community has a grip on this?
Yeah, when we get requests, we always copy our TRMP plans and floodable areas, floodable zones, and connected issues. So we send in writing mostly, because it's very hard to explain over the phone to them that, because they don't believe it's floodable. We believe it's floodable. So what I do is always, with maps and everything, just made them aware. So then the next thing they do is to call the mayor. So
yes, they do. I can assure you of that.
Thank you, Mangala.
All right, do I have a mover for this? It's a moving.
I think I moved it right in the beginning.
I seconded it.
Worship, seconded by Councillor Tupara. All those in favour?
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to page 24 for the Journeys Infrastructure Projects. Dave Hatfield.
Kia ora. I'll take the report as read. Just some feedback we are getting is that we can adapt our next reports to with the feedback for the plan. We realised there was a lot of concerns about drainage, so we'll try and highlight that in the reports. More than willing to get feedback, as reports aren't just one way. If we get feedbacks, we can more information to those reports. And the only issue I also I put the sentence about the recovery program will promote their businesses, which should have been sustained. Right, probably a bad use of words. So more than willing to take questions. We've also got a key part of the team is the Journeys operations team, Libby and Moni in terms of traffic management, who the specialists to answer those queries.
Thank you for the extensive report. It's very good to have an update on nearly everything, and I'm absolutely heartened by the work you are working on about us clearing the bridges if we get triggered, and there are certain civil defence triggers or damage to infrastructure. The only thing I want you also to consider, when you look at the general agreement, that WSP or our bridge advisors have to tell us that both structures are at risk of failure, and then obviously getting civil defence involved as well. Should we not also take into account the fact that if there is a backlog, there could be extensive damage to houses which are private property, I know that, but in the end it costs the whole community a lot. So even though we do focus on the infrastructure that we own and the possible damage to that, which puts the bar quite high, I would say, and then the civil defence influence there as well, I would urge you to also take into account the possible downstream effect. The bridges might not have structural damage, but a damming could then cause damage to the houses downstream. So I just urge you to also take that into account when you work to finalise this. And that might come through the civil defence input into it, lives. But thank you for that, and I 100% support it. But I do urge you to also take the damage to private homes into account. Thank you.
That is the NZTA of wanting, like Tineroto, where with a trigger level of 80 millimetres per hour, that's the closure. So wanting something is what's the trigger that is the reason to activate the houses, is because it's too late by the time the river's going up. and someone goes up there, well, I think it's now to start activating it. So what we want is a factual number, and that's what we need from our soil team, specialists, to say what's the trigger that we think is going to cause the issue that you've stated.
And just supplementary, congratulations for proactively reaching out to NZTA, because I know that's a combined action. It's not just the William Petty Bridge, it is both in the end. So get them on board and tell them what practically happens on the ground, because we are here when these things happen. Tim and myself were hanging over that bridge at not a big event. It was in November, but it was hugely clogged up. And we can see the impact here on the ground. So also make sure our local impact and the residents that are affected, their voices are heard through this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to second. Great to see progress in this area, and it's going to help, I believe, the problems in the previous discussion around aggradation, speeding up the Wamata, and yeah, awesome. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I've just got two questions. Page 32, it mentions increasing requests from contractors for work, and you're preparing to have discussions with them. Is that because they've scaled up for work and now the work's not there, or what? Is there more detail?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. We're still doing a minimum maintenance, but it's minimum, and some of the recovery work, we were waiting for some announcements. We're getting those announcements, but some of that work is going to start coming out over the next couple of months, but it's not happening now. And so, and what's happening around the district, some of the forestry work is decreasing, and so there's capacity that's starting to come up.
So there's a lot of workers, but no. Is it looking in the future there's going to be work for them, or is it?
I suppose we have to be careful. I mean, to be brutally frank, we're not be able to save every business, roading contractor business out there. And that's probably a discussion we probably need to share with the council at some stage.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, yeah. It does. There's peaks and troughs, but at the moment, if highways and us start gearing up, there'll probably a lot of work coming out. So it's just how we manage it, and that's why we're having those discussions with the transport agency.
So is that trek an option? Because it sounds like we've got this trek coming to town, and our own guys are struggling for work. Is that a conversation that could be had?
Yeah, well, it's hard because, I mean, they were waiting for budget announcements as well. So, I mean, there's certainly been a lot of work on the highway. I mean, you can't disagree with that. There's been a lot of drainage work, a lot of work. And I suppose they're just waiting for, we're into this 3-year budget phase and once surety, and we're still waiting for announcements for NZTA, then we can actually get some certainty of delivery of. It's a tricky phase.
And just a second question, the last paragraph on page 32, it mentions one of the immediate earnings from the Streets for People program. Does that worry that we're not going to get any more reports on that, or are we getting...
sorry, yeah, it was more clarification is in my opinion, I think the committees are getting a lot of the recovery through other committees now, whether it's CDM or sustainable, you're getting, I probably think it's probably our time to focus on the BAU, and that was one of the, Streets for People should have been into this report, and that's what I'm saying is that this report should just focus on our 3-year plan deliveries and the recoveries as it goes to, well, it's going to 2 committees that I believe, and probably it doesn't need to come to this. It's a suggestion, and these reports just talk about our 3-year program, and that would have included Streets for People. So whatever the next 3-year program is, business as usual, it gets included. Just focus on that, and that's what it is. The immediate learnings from that.
So you're saying it will start getting included?
Absolutely. No. But you won't see the recovery programs, or that's what I'm suggesting. You won't see the recovery programs at Large Woody, Beverley, and all those other programs. They're now getting reported to the Sustainable Tairāwhiti, and I don't believe we should come to this, I believe we should be focusing on our 3-year.
So just to get that right, we will be seeing more of the streets
Yeah, absolutely.
in this meeting.
Yes. Well, that's my suggestion.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think firstly for the report, I'm happy to finally read something about traffic management because that has been a gripe of many of our citizens over the past few months. I appreciate that we're waiting for the Land Transport to confirm what their government policy statement traffic management practices review might look like, but Waka Kotahi has also indicated that local road networks are to decide for themselves on the direction we wish to take. So I really appreciated that we've listed our concerns over traffic management in the following supporting document, which will go out to present and future contractors.
Yeah, this is where I probably need to bring the experts in. I mean, I don't want to, like I say, so Libby and Mo, in terms of traffic management, they're our gurus. And so they're driving the changes, the very changes that you were talking about. They've been raising that for about the last 12 to 18 months. So, an opportunity to come up here? Yeah, exactly. We can run. No, we'll see.
I'll just jump on the end.
Kia ora. My name is Mokarakaruru, Mo for short. I'm the traffic manager for TDC.
Yep, and you've experienced, you've worked with Fulton Oak a few years and then you were GHD as well.
Yeah, probably 34 years in roading, shovel to computer to laptop. Yeah, worked for Fulton Hogan, down at GHD as a consultant, specifically in this traffic management area. Was the traffic management coordinator for both Waka Kotahi and on behalf of GDC 5 years prior to coming to GDC.
So if there's any specific questions?
So the council has a specific traffic management plan which we will advise future contractors as well as current contractors on what our proposed preferences in regards to traffic management?
It's under development at the moment. What we know from NDTA is that they've adopted what they call the New Zealand Guide for Temporary Traffic Management, and it's still under review. They have a few difficulties, so they've forced that any other local body can look at driving their own way forward in temporary traffic management.
Is it realistic to expect that traffic management will come down to 10% of the total cost as opposed to 30% that it is at the moment? Is that a measure that you might use, you know, as a tool in the future? Like we've only got 10% to use on this activity, and how are we going to use that wisely?
It's probably hard to come up with some sort of numbers around it. It's been industry driven for probably the last 20 years. We could probably try and find some indicative figures, but it would be hard to give a final.
So it's just a case-by-case basis.
And just put in the report, we could put traffic management, well, they are, and you can see a reduction in that, but it could actually go into other unit items. So the issue maybe is the bottom line rather than traffic management. We could say, yeah, you've got a 15% reduction in traffic management costs on that line item, but the price at the bottom has stayed the same. So sometimes you're wanting a reduction. So that's the matrix that we've got to work with.
Right.
Or provide some clarity to you that you're getting reductions.
Yeah.
I have another question which isn't traffic management related, but I'll pause it while he's here in case anyone has any traffic management.
Through you, Chair. Councillor Foster, the traffic management sits within health and safety of project works, and as a PCB, Nadine owns that risk. So we have been pushing the boundaries and working with contractors on innovative ideas for the last 12 to 18 months on how to reduce costs and overheads of traffic management whilst keeping our people on the road safe. So I guess as Junior's operations manager, I'm here to advocate for our CE as well, and to make sure, whilst we make maximum amount of cost savings, that we don't push safety across the line.
Bye.
Councillor Robinson.
Thanks. Mo, you said that it's under review. NZTA is doing their review. Can you, because you and I have talked about this recently, can you just share with the council table the other standard or the other standard that we may be able to adopt as a region?
Currently, we're practicing the Code of Practice for Temporary Traffic Management, or COPM for short. We've been practicing that probably for the last 20 years, some sort of form. Before that, there were localised rules where TDC, I believe, and a couple other little councils had their own set of rules for temporary traffic management. Under our review, we want to take the best of all three and look at the cost effectiveness for the works going forward, especially recovery, and find those synergies. We don't want to recreate the wheel because that's going to be too hard. So we just want to pick out the best things that are site specific for the Gisborne region.
And so, which I think is what we want to hear, and it's awesome to hear that Mah's underway. When did you think you might complete that review?
We're hoping to start our first trial before the 1st of July and then roll it out. It's not going to be a full, here's the whole set of rules. It's going to be an ongoing thing. Like I said, our region's site specific. So something that works in town isn't necessarily going to work in so we have to adjust as we go. So the hope and having the willingness of our contractors is working together just to find where those specifics are, adjust what we have, and then I hope in 6 to 8 months we'll have some sort of document.
Process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. Great to see that we're moving in. And of course we want no one hurt, but my meter is going to be the people meter, and when people stop complaining to me that they're sick of seeing the wastage, that's going to be my meter. But good on you, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so we move on to some other questions then, not relating to traffic management. Any of those? Councillor Ria, you had one.
Just one final one. Just noting on page 38 under Strategic Network Review, I see that the review excludes how existing roading contracts are procured and delivered. And I just wanted to ask if that will actually be a process that will happen sometime in the near future, given that topic has also been suggested by multiple councillors in the past few months. Maybe an example, we had citizens who attended the 3-year plan deliberations, and her husband's concern over the process of how potholes are filled now in comparison to how potholes have traditionally been repaired, band-aiding as opposed to a fix, and possibly these types of issues could be addressed along with other issues through the review of procurement and delivery of roading and roading repairs. Is there somewhere in the future soon that might happen?
So through the chair, there's no intention to review our procurement process. We haven't put that on. We've thrashed that out over the last probably 4 years or 3 years around that, and established our procurement policy. We'd need to get specifics around what what would be achieved by undertaking yet another review of our procurement. Perhaps it's probably a reminder for councillors around what our procurement process entails, and also around our contracts. So we're only 2 years into our existing
roading network contracts, which were completely overhauled. The council were on board with the process around how we went into the 5 different areas as opposed to when we were based on a NZTA model. So we've done a significant amount of work. I need to understand more around what further we need in the procurement space after you've had a refresher on what procurement entails and maybe an overview of our contracts.
I do think it's very timely to do a workshop or an informative workshop with councillors on the work that was done before they joined the council.
Just in terms of the delivery part of the procurement and delivery, is there recall? Does the council itself have a recall for how certain works have been undertaken? So we have all this research that tells us that our land isn't suitable for certain types of roads. So do we have a process where we can ensure that when our contractors who are delivering roading, the materials that they're using are actually fit for purpose for some of the concerns that we already know come across this table?
So that'll be part of your contract monitor.
That's part of the contract monitoring. And Libby can...
Sorry, Tim. Libby, Junior Ops Manager. So in terms of some of the challenges we have, Councillor, is that Te Tarawhiti is a remote region and we struggle to source the appropriate materials. So things like aggregates are born from our local rivers, and we work and adapt the national specifications which might be used in other regions to adopt to affordable materials that we can adapt and use within our local context. What that does mean is we get different lifespans of roads. It performs differently. Contractors have to manage it and work it differently. So at the end of the day, it comes down to the putia, the money. We do our absolute best to deliver with what the resources we have, and how we adapt there. Noting that we are also only year 2 in our maintenance contracts, and this round we have new contractors. We have gone from a model where one contractor had the entire network, so we are in a process of educating, training, recruiting appropriate maintenance-based skills with our contractors that hasn't necessarily existed widely for quite a long time within the region.
Okay, just before we exit this paper, I just have a comment on the 1,000-year bridge, and when you see the photo of it, you just realise the enormity of this project. It looks huge, and the spiral staircase. So looking forward to seeing that being put in place. I do have a question though. The storytelling, is that going to be happening before the bridge is in place, or is that happening after the bridge is in place?
That's a good question. We're in liaison with Charlotte and the team how she wants that presented.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So, since we're on that topic as well, our contractor's actually gone down to Hawke's Bay to give us an update. It sounds like there potentially could be another delay of 3 weeks until they finish. We just need a date. So once we know that, we'll inform the committee.
Thank you. Councillor Gregory.
Thank you. I just got a couple of quick points. Really so stoked to see the footpath go in behind Mitre 10. It was something that came up when I first started on council, and we've had a lot of floods and things which have been on the back burner, so it's really exciting to see that. Thank you very much. And also the change of speed limits that we're doing. I've just had a bit of feedback about the 20k in the CBD. Actually, it's very hard to go faster than 30k. I've done it a few times just to see how fast I can go. It's quite difficult to go faster than that, but where does it start and where does it end?
We can give you the maps, because we've got we can provide that straight after this.
Oh, yeah.
We've got
It's
that.
good to have that information for when people bring it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. I can follow on from the discussion primary worship on page 34 around flash clearance, particularly with regard to William Petty and the bridges, and the possible inclusion or involvement of civil defence in the clearance, whether or not there's a consideration to also involve the harbour master in there to assist with keeping the river clear for river users, in particular rowers and canoeists, and more especially our wakarama folk who are preparing for the Worlds at the moment. And just to, whilst that work is happening, there's a thought to river users. My first point. And my second one, following on Councillor Costa's comment on the 1,000-year bridge, if it's possible to just have further discussion around the resourcing sources for that project, and alongside the resources that are going to other highways and bridges. That this is an exceptional project with direct funding from a particular source, and is not sharing that resource with other projects that are happening in this report. Just so that's very clear publicly.
Yes, just ask, yeah, it's Curry's Constructions, and so they project.
Yes, but just ensuring that's clear.
Councillor Robinson.
Just one thing to ask. Why has Lytton High got a 30k sign and the other schools have got 40k signs? What?
30.
So the schools, Lytton High's got a flashing 30k sign, but all the other flashing signs between here and the airport are all 40k signs. I don't know why Lytton was 30.
Can I ask Tina Murova, she's there, but we can check that for you. Because I know the electronic signs, absolutely, some of them have they're changed for that, but we can give it.
Glasson Road, it's all 40.
High School's got a 30k flashing sign, and the other ones are all 40s. I wondered why Lytton was different. Lytton, High School.
Oh, right.
30k is flashing.
So all the schools are actually trying to get down to 30. So the 40 is still over. It's kind of like what we had before. So yeah, the aim was to get all the schools to 30. So there was more consistency. Because we're in the interim speed management plan process, you've got a bit of both. So it's a bit of a mess out there right now, especially because we're still putting start to see more size.
That clarifies it. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Page 54, 3.4. Congratulations, we've got compliments coming through, and it's a roading compliment in between.
Deleted.
So, and then just a comment on the roading schedule. I've been copying a lot of flack, and I declare I am from Manatuki. The Wainiki Road, is that in the schedule? Fixing, we've got a lot of our staff using that road. I've been it's very dangerous. And also comments, there's a very long 30k session through that road through the play centre and Manatuki School. And I've had feedback on that, which it is a very long 30k zone.
Very, very long.
Very, very long. And the 30k should actually start where the potholes start. Yeah. That's where the bulk of the danger is.
Yeah. Just with Wainiki, there's some technical issues there, not just because it's the roads, it is a lot of forestry that's coming through it, but we've also found it's been stabilised and stabilised and stabilised, and what happened is our Fulton Hope, and what it does, you've almost got a concrete base under it, and so they put the rippers through and they took the tines off the grader, so they're coming back to us in some parts, because it's just been trying to reuse the materials that are existing there. That the underlying base has become a concrete slab. So that's part of the reason. The other part is we are And we're nursing until we get to 30 June and we get our new budgets as well.
I just had a question. I was at the, I was in the Whatatutu community the other night, and residents were very interested to know if that there were any planned works for the Waikohu Bridge corner. So it's not specifically the bridge, but the little dip immediately after the corner that often when the Waikohu floods, it actually comes to the back of that river and then floods that whole little, there's a tiny little dip before you enter the Puha and the Whatatutu and Mangatu communities, which essentially they end up becoming blocked off like an island and they can't get out. And so they did talk about during the cyclone having 5 members of the community who actually depend on dialysis, and so them having to brave through that that area on local trucks in order to get patients for dialysis through to army trucks at Te Karaka. So they're very interested to know if anything would be happening in terms of that dip immediately after the Waikohu Bridge, which is as you turn off State Highway and head towards Puha.
That was an overland flow path in the event, wasn't it? So it's an actual flow path. It's part of a broader question because of that, I think. So it's really difficult to answer immediately because that's the natural way for the water to go in a flood. And where's it going to go alternately? Maybe something could be engineered on the other side of the bridge.
Could I just bring that up so it's, you know, it's got your attention. And the last thing I wanted to say about roading is the bridge just before, what is it, Grey's Bush. There's a bridge just before Grey's Bush, and that road every year gets resealed and the bridge always gets missed. And always during winter, that bridge actually becomes the problem area. It's not level with the actual road. There's lots of bumps and holes, and so over the course of winter, that particular bridge actually gets worse and worse. And last year, the holes where that bridge connected to the actual road were atrocious, and then when the roading came in, we thought, oh yeah, it's going to get fixed, but they only repaved the road of the area of R&B, so that bridge there just before the Waimata Valley Road turnoff, that always gets missed in terms of, you know, people who use that road regularly and the appreciation of that bridge when the rest of the road is quite fine, but it keeps getting topped up very nicely just before R&V. Just saying.
Okay, voting reports. Do I have a mover?
Yes.
Moved by Your Worship, seconded by Councillor Ria. All those in favour?
Aye.
Okay, now we'll go to page...
Thanks, Dave.
Pardon? Well, we'll go to page 96, and we've got Strategic Network Resilience Program Business Case. Get online.
Kia ora koutou, katoa, nau mai hana mai, Pro James Llewellyn Tokawingwa. Thanks very much for the opportunity to talk to this paper, which was first discussed at Regional Transport Committee a couple of weeks ago. So those who are at that meeting will be familiar with its content. I'll take the report as read, but did want to make a few overall comments to provide some context. Firstly, this report and this business case has been funded by NZTA, and so it's important to acknowledge the contribution of our partners to that. And the business case which we're looking to deliver over the next year or so will be very much focused on future resilience, which supports but is distinct from recovery. So recovery is looking at the here and now, repairing the network, getting it functional again, whereas resilience is looking more to the future and asking the question, how do we take steps to try and mitigate the risks of something like Cyclone Gabrielle and indeed other severe weather events before it having the impact that it's had this time around, because it's very, very apparent that the economic and the social disruption and the impacts on mental health and well-being and all those negatives are things we really want to avoid in the future. So the idea behind this business case work is to effectively look at the future levels of service that the council needs to provide to support communities, to support economic development, and do so within what is going to be a very constrained budget. So affordability is talked about pretty much in every report that comes before council, and this is no different. What we also need to do is look at where are the vulnerabilities and risks to our network, and they could be all over the region. So this time in Cyclone Gabrielle, certain areas were hit, certain areas were perhaps more lucky, but the next severe weather event, the situation could be different. So understanding where those risks are is critical to then working out what the potential future resilience solutions might be. And fundamentally, it is all about protecting lifeline transport assets from the impact not only of severe weather, but also more gradual threats such as climate change, coastal erosion, etc. And finally, the important point here is to emphasize that it is very much a partnership with local communities, because in order to understand what the potential solutions might be and what levels of service are likely to be viable in specific areas on specific routes, engaging with those communities and understanding their future needs is going to be critical to all of this work. So a lot of our efforts over the next year is going to be through the engagement process, trying to look to the future beyond the immediate recovery to see what's necessary to, as I say, avoid a situation which we're currently in at the moment. In terms of the report itself and the scope of the business case, I will draw your attention to Table 1, which effectively has a list of items in 2 columns. The left-hand column is the items that are in scope or proposed to be in scope, and the right-hand column, items that, whilst maybe not in scope for this business case, might still be interdependent with it, and other work streams may be going on which this business case needs to integrate with. So that's really all I wanted to say in terms of the report. This is a really, really important piece of work for the future of the region, and very happy to take comments and questions which will hopefully inform how we move things forward.
Thank you for that, James. Yeah, no, I totally concur with your thoughts. This is such an important report. Resilience and everything for our network is so important for the future, and it's applaudable that you're encouraging or incorporating all the communities with your business case as well. So fantastic. I can't wait to see the outcome. So we got any questions for James? Councillor Holder.
I just happily move it and agree with everything, just about everything in the whole report.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting to see it all laid out. It's like a great weight, certainly it feels like a great weight off my shoulders, and I'm sure a lot of it. There is a way forward, and that it's, we're going to hopefully get this, these issues sorted. So happy to move. Thank you.
No worries. Yeah, well, we've been so bogged down with recovery. It's just so nice to see that we're future-proofing our roading network, and with this business case, that's going to certainly help and prioritise where our spending and our efforts will be for the future. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, Councillor Cranston. Yeah, thanks for that. Also support. It seems to be a reaction to the consultation, especially bullet point 7 on page 101. The objectives of the business case. Bullet point 7, I heard in a lot of the, particularly the rural meetings, where there was a recognition that we're struggling,
and the appreciation of the distances involved in that. And a lot of the community just wanted to be enabled to be part of the solutions. And I think this is going a long way in addressing that. It was something that was quite specifically mentioned at quite a few of the parties. I mean, it's things as simple as having a stockpile of metal where the farmers had the equipment and they could do potholing themselves rather than having it on an RFS basis where someone had to go out there, and it just seemed to be a possibility of getting better solutions and efficiencies. So, yeah, well done.
Councillor Robertson.
On page 101, the objectives of the case study, did NZTA have any say in determining the scope of the business case study, given they're funding it?
Yes.
Yeah, through the chair, yes, they do, because they are ultimately the funder of the business case, and they are likely to be the co-funder of any solutions that are ultimately delivered through future work. So we do need to make sure that NZTA colleagues are supportive. They have made some comments on the scope, and I think quite rightly have tried to focus it more on transport rather than some of the other infrastructure items, which, although they have a relationship with transport, so communications, for example, those are actually not part of the business case at the moment. So we are specifically looking at the transport asset and how it needs to perform in the future.
I think this is through the chair, if I may, it's a really good example of how we've been working over the last recovery period with NZTA. And so this work came out of a collaboration around what are some of the major issues that we're looking at going forward, what do we need to fund, how can we unlock that funding. So there were, a lot of GDC staff in the room, NZTA staff in the room, and then this was like, actually we need to be thinking around future shocks, what this might look like in terms of cost implications for our ability to fund, our levels of service, what the community expectations are. So it really showed quite a different move in terms of the relationship that we have with the NZTA, and we're seeing more of that will come forward as with the recovery. Additional funding that's been announced will be a similar collaborative process to apply that money into our roads. So it's a real positive funding.
I'm happy to second the vote.
Supplementary, Mr. Chair. So I take it from that answer, Madam CE, that we are happy with the breadth and depth of the objectives of the case study.
Yes, we are. Well, I mean, there's some areas we'd like to see a little bit more around the hierarchy. So what's the hierarchy of decision making that we need to apply through all of this, because we'll come out with some information, some needs and service, but then there need to be a discussion around trade-offs and where you're going to put your funding and things like that. So there's just a little bit looking at what we might need to put in there, but by and large, this covers the scope that we need.
Just wondering, I guess, thank you, James. I met you at our RTC meeting, but yeah, it is great to have somebody looking beyond the immediate into the future. And I guess I was just thinking over the course of this meeting how we prioritise in terms of lifelines the access to civil defence emergency headquarters and in our rural communities. Those are schools, those are marae, and also key routes for ambulances and things like that. Is there a way that we can ensure that those roadways are resilient and clear, or even able to be got to? Because in some instances it's difficult to get to those areas for shelter and protection for our community. I don't know if it comes into here or anything else.
Yeah, through the chair, it certainly does. So one of the things we're looking to do as part of this project is get some really good mapping, which kind of sets out all of these different community assets and destinations, so that we've got a really clear picture of what the options are, if there are any options, for how you access essential services and lifelines in the event of an emergency. So, yeah, this is absolutely critical. Understanding, where people need to get to, how they get there, as safely and as efficiently as possible. How we manage disruption in terms of any diversionary routes or other aspects of all that. So yeah, it'll all be covered through, I think, quite a good mapping process, which will really give a sense of the scale of the challenge that we know is out there.
Thank you, James.
Okay, again, there's a noting report. It's been moved by Councillor Alder. He's taken it by worship. All those in favour? Aye. Okay, that's the end of our meeting, so I declare this meeting closed.